Ukraine is hitting Russia's fleet, fuel infrastructure and logistics. Moscow is answering with more attacks on Ukrainian cities. The West is making big promises, but can it help defend our skies now? You all know him very well. Joining me again is a former U.S. Army officer and military analyst and a brilliant YouTube host, Preston Stewart. Preston, good to see you again.
Yeah, great to be here, Natalie. Appreciate the invite.
So, Preston, you've just returned from the NATO summit in Ankara, and I know you had a brief conversation with the President Volodymyr Zelenskyy there. Without revealing anything that should remain private, what was the most important message you took away from that meeting?
So it was last minute. We didn't know we were going to have a chance to meet with the president, so we jumped on it when it presented itself. It was actually Ramina Eshkazai, apologies in the pronunciation, but a Ukrainian that helped set that up with the president's office. And the message that I wanted to get across with that brief interaction was a message to the American people. So I know President Zelenskyy is often talking with world leaders. He regularly is putting together messages for President Trump and for different audiences. But I was trying to get something that just your average American could hear and what would be of interest to them. So we talked about what they need to know from President Zelensky's point of view, and he really focused on freedom. He said, we're fighting for freedom, very similar to how the United States has throughout their history. We don't want this war. We don't want to be fighting, but we have to, and we are choosing to do so because we want freedom. And that was really what the core of the conversation focused on.
That's a very nice message. Preston, you also spoke with the Secretary General Mark Rutte in Ankara. Well, at least I saw the picture. Was there anything important he told you that we haven't heard publicly or perhaps haven't paid enough attention to?
Look, Mark Rutte is a professional. He's very good at this. He's had all the questions before. So my question was very brief, and I'll bring that up in a second. But he was very generous with his time and answered questions from about 25, 26 different creators. But there wasn't anything groundbreaking. He's got his notes. He's got his... I think he's doing a good job, but he's got kind of a script that he's working off of, and that's what we heard. My question for him was around the, there's been a lot of disagreements throughout the NATO alliance in the past 1 to 2 years, asking if there's any concern what signal that sends to our allies in terms of deterrence. Again, however, very diplomatic. He said, no, we are stronger than ever. And internal disagreements just means that it's a healthy relationship.
Okay. Sorry. No, it just...
You kind of know what you're getting into with this, right?
Yes. No, I must admit he's a very brilliant with answering, punch questions, from journalists who, well, I can give him a credit. Everyone has been talking about President Trump's decision to move forward with a licensing Patriot production for Ukraine. And it was unexpected, and if Washington doesn't change course again, it could become a historic decision. But Preston, let's be realistic. Building that production capacity will take years, and Ukrainians don't have that years. So my question is much more practical. What can Ukraine realistically receive right now? In the coming weeks or months, what kind of a military support could actually help protect Ukrainian skies before Russia launched another wave of overnight missiles and ballistic attacks again?
You're spot on, Natalie. It's almost two different conversations, the Patriot piece, and we'll come back to that. But in the near term, that's not the solution. More Patriots would be a part of the solution, but a core component at the NATO summit over and over and over again was the need for more air defense for Ukraine. President Zelenskyy focused on it. Secretary Rutte focused on it. Like every time Ukraine came up, the talk was about more air defense. So there are additional batteries, there are additional munitions, additional interceptors across the alliance that could be utilized in Ukraine, but we know that there's a shortage. I mean, it's a key component right now. So the decision to allow Ukraine to produce these, again, assuming that actually goes through, is great news for everyone. It's great news for Ukraine. It's great news for the United States. It's great news for our NATO allies because we need more of these, and more interceptors that are produced is a net positive. But really, you're talking about 1 to 2 years down the road, if not longer. So in the short term, it's the same conversation we've been having for a while. We're looking to the United States and other NATO allies that might be able to provide interceptors right now to Ukraine. And I don't know that there's a great answer on that, Natalie. It's very clearly a shortage in Ukraine right now. We've seen that with some of these recent strikes where a number of ballistic missiles have gotten through, and it doesn't look like any allies are able, at least right now, to step up and provide a large volume of those.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. And Preston, there have been repeated complaints that air raid alerts sometimes arrive too late or don't accurately reflect the ballistic threat. Well, that been just a few days ago, and I was like, okay, I hear the explosion. I started to run to the bathroom, but I haven't heard any air raid sirens. How important is early warning in a modern air defense? Are there technologies or a NATO system that could significantly improve Ukraine's response in time?
That's surprising. I hadn't heard that about the lack of warning recently. There's also, my understanding is most folks in Ukraine, especially in Kyiv and other areas that have been hit relatively hard, are probably a little bit jaded at this time and are just so used to hearing the sounds. But there's no excuse at this point for not getting early warning. Ukraine has a number of systems themselves to help take care of this. And NATO has been, to my understanding, and should continue to provide some sense of early warning. But that's absolutely critical. I know not everybody has the ability to get down to a protected shelter, and sometimes the weather doesn't permit, or you're on a high floor of a building and you can't get there in time. But yeah, it's unfortunate hearing that's something that's been happening recently. That's not good.
Yeah, that's concerning. That just gives us a sign that if before I was thinking, okay, I can sleep in my bed, but when I'm going to hear it, I'm going to hide. Now, no, it's better for me to go to the basement, where I'm not going, unfortunately, and that's a very bad example. So I'm just not on the higher levels floors. So, Preston, let's talk about the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Ukraine has been carrying out increasingly successful strikes against Russian ports, logistics, vessels, shadow fleet. We don't always know the full extent of the damage because of much of it remains, kind of classified. From what you do know, how significant are these losses for Russia?
So you're spot on in that we don't know the exact details, but we can look at some of the kind of underlying aspects to see what's changed. The Sea of Azov is a great example. The shipping we have seen fall off a cliff from 90 to 98 ships present in the day, down to 40 to 20. And the last I saw 2 days ago was 3. So look, if that's off by a multiple of 10, let's say, and it's drastically undercounting, there's a huge fall off in shipping moving through the Sea of Azov. And we know that that's a major focus right now for Russia because the land corridor is increasingly under Ukrainian drone threat. Same thing we saw in that land corridor. We don't know exactly how many pallets of water, or maybe pallets is a bad example for the Russian army, but we don't know exactly how much ammunition is getting to the front lines. We don't know exactly what the troop rotations look like today compared with, say, 3 months ago before this middle strike campaign really gained some traction. But there's fewer trucks on the road. And there's more indications of trucks not being willing to drive, drivers not willing to make that route. And we're seeing countless vehicles blown up on the side. So there is some impact. With Crimea, we're seeing more and more reports of power outages, both short and long term. Gas prices through the roof. Like, those are the things. We don't know exactly what's getting hit. We don't know exactly the percentage of fuel that is now available in Crimea. But when you're seeing the cost, the equivalent that I've seen is around $15 US per gallon. That's a huge spike in a very short period of time. So it's having an impact. And the way that it looks right now is that this just can't be sustainable for Russia over the long haul.
Preston, I will get back to Crimea in a minute, but just to finish this, I think these attacks on the Azov Sea and the Black Sea, I think, underestimated. If Russia continues losing its logistical advantage in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, where does it go next? Could we see Moscow going to the Baltic Sea?
Well, so this is really interesting because Crimea is very difficult to defend. The Sea of Azov is only one way that they're able to move supplies in there, but the overland routes are not feasible, and they can't move stuff in via air. And I think where a lot of folks get this mixed up is it's not a matter of can you physically move there or back. It takes a lot of supplies to keep a military functioning, especially in a time of war. nonstop logistics. So when you start throwing a little bit of a fork in that, it becomes a major problem very quickly. Now, Natalie, I think you were talking more about exports per se, and yeah, I think we probably will start to see a bit of a shift to other locations.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know that the Sea of Azov was a major focus. It's something I'd have to look into in terms of the exact impact that's going to have on exports. But it's, again, just like a refinery gets hit and goes down for a day, it's something. And you're talking about 1,000 cuts at this point.
Absolutely. Regarding the occupied Crimea, so Russia's dictator, Vladimir Putin, recently said that Russia is creating a new fuel supply system for occupied Crimea that, in his words, will be very difficult for the enemy to reach. Do you believe it? Or have Ukrainian long-range strikes already shown that no logistics route is really out of the reach?
That's not feasible. The best example I've heard so far is if they started building underground storage facilities, massive underground storage facilities. That didn't happen yesterday. So it's not happening. And if they start building it right now, we know what's going to happen. It's very clearly in range of Ukrainian strikes. So no, I think they're trying to gloss over it. And it does seem like we're a bit in that phase right now with Russia, where some folks are being brave and coming forward and saying, hey, this is a really bad problem. But the higher up you go, the chain of command inside the government, there's still a lot of referring to this simply as a Ukrainian information operation and that everything is actually fine.
Preston, Russia has repeatedly crossed Western red lines without facing consequences strong enough to stop it. I mean, today we saw the drones in Moldova, and a lot of drones were in Romania in the Black Sea. What would real deterrence look like now?
That's $1 million question. So that was one of the topics that was raised in the NATO summit, because in a lot of senses here, you're talking about NATO allies and how NATO would respond to stuff like that. We just briefly got to hit on it, but in talking with some of the operations folks, they pointed to the incursions of Russian drones into Poland, and I think it was Lithuania as well, about a year ago, and how it was 19 in one night. I mean, it was not a mistake, the number that went in. And the NATO view, from my perception of the NATO view, is that deterrence was upheld in that regard. Russia tested it out, did not see what they thought they were going to see, or did not think that the door was open to do more. But I think that's a very thin line. I mean, they flew explosive drones into NATO airspace, and there was not a direct retaliatory response. We'll see. I think NATO is pretty happy, all things considered, with the war being contained in Ukraine. That was not a given. It has never been a given. If we go back to the early days of the conflict, the concern right out the gate was this spilling into a broader war across the continent and pulling NATO in. So I do think seeing the fighting generally contained inside of NATO, inside of Ukrainian territory, is viewed as a win for deterrence. But that's an everyday issue still.
Preston, the United States has now resumed strikes against Iran. How worried should Ukraine be? Do you think there is a possibility that American President Donald Trump, because of the oil prices, will lift sanctions from Russia again?
We never know. Nobody knows. We're here in the U.S. We do watch American news all day, every day, but it is pretty chaotic, to say the least. Maybe we've seen that in the past. We know that's something that he's very focused on. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has fallen off quite a bit. But look, the last time they lifted sanctions, Ukraine ramped up strikes, their own sanctions package, ramped up strikes on refineries. So even lifting sanctions, I think it would be a nice reprieve for Putin and for Russia right now. I don't think that's going to solve all their problems. Again, a major issue right now has nothing to do with sanctions, and it's the domestic concern over lack of fuel. There's nothing, sanctions relief is going to do to resolve that in the very short term. So it's worth keeping an eye on. I hope that doesn't happen. I think Ukraine is in a good spot right now with Russia layering pressure on. Natalie, at the summit, everybody was optimistic. For the first time that I've seen there. This is only the second summit I've been to, but a couple other NATO events, and everybody was optimistic with this view that Ukraine has the upper hand. There was a great quote in, I think it was Reuters the other day, saying the NATO official said President Trump likes a winner, and right now Ukraine is winning. That's the assessment. People feel like Ukraine really has the upper hand. I don't think I've seen that before. So in that circumstance, let's hope there is not something that eases the pressure on Russia from any other direction.
Preston, that's a very good sign about those narratives you're saying, because I've never been to NATO summit, but as an international correspondent, I've been many times, maybe, I don't know, 8 times in a row in Davos conference. And I was always tracking these, I don't know, how do you say, the words, intonations, everything that politicians are saying there, economists, businessmen. So it's also giving you the sense of the overall picture, how the Western partners are watching this war, how they are ready to react and respond. So that's a great point. Preston, I cannot ignore the extraordinary video showing Russian soldier transporting military equipment with what looked like a civilian vehicle while a heavy machine gun was mounted in an almost improvised way. If I'm not mistaken, that weapon was originally designed for anti-aircraft defense. Just let's watch, because I saw it. I saw it on your Instagram. Oh, okay. It doesn't have any sound, right? I thought.
It's perfect.
Okay. So, okay, if it doesn't have any sound, well, at least it's funny. Okay.
And the part people miss right here is coming up. He steps up and he grabs that hot barrel. Right there you go. Yeah, just scorches the hand.
Yeah, I saw Yes, I saw the last moment. I'm like, seriously? Is that what you're doing when everything is going out of control? When do you see a footage like that? What's your reaction? Do you laugh because it's so absurd? Do you see something much more serious? A military that is improvising because it no longer has enough proper equipment?
It looks like a little bit of fun, if I'm being honest. Grabbing a hold of a machine gun like that and getting spun around, it kind of looks like a fun ride. But there is something you can pull on that's a little bit deeper here. First off, the improvisation of military equipment. And we've seen this from very early on in the war. So it's not new. It's not unique to Russia by any stretch. They're trying what they can. This is probably a sort of air defense asset trying to counter the Ukrainian drones over the skies. The other part of it, though, is the not properly being set up and the instructor there not really knowing what they're getting into. So I know one of the major topics of conversation right now is a possible Russian mobilization. We're hearing that more and more on Russian channels. And this is the kind of thing you should keep in mind is, do they have the infrastructure? Do they have the leadership? Do they have the cadre to effectively train those guys at all? Like, again, Natalie, mistakes happen in the military, and there are thousands of hilarious videos from very professional U.S. soldiers making mistakes, probably not quite like that, but it happens. But it's just, Russia's talking about trying to put possibly hundreds of thousands of people through a very shortened, condensed training time period. And if this is kind of the backbone of their training, it's probably not going to go very well.
Preston, I cannot let you go without asking about Senator Lindsey Graham. And his death shocked many Ukrainians. He was one of the, strongest voices for Ukraine in Washington on the Capitol Hill, and one of the toughest advocates of sanctions against Russia, a brilliant international policy politician. How significant is this loss for Ukraine, and who, if anyone, can realistically fill that role on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, it's a big one. Anytime a politician, especially any politician at baseline that passes away during their term is awful. In this case, Lindsey Graham, of course, a pretty strong voice in the U.S. national security space and in the Republican Party. He's going to be hard to replace, I would say. He's been doing this for quite a while, and has, whether you like him or dislike him, he's I think gained. I would say probably a lot of respect as somebody that speaks what they think and stands by their beliefs. Of course, I feel like this isn't getting as much attention right now, but he served in uniform for like 30 some years. He was just recently, I think, left the Air National Guard or the Guard. So a lifetime of service to the country. In terms of who follows, we'll see. I think there's going to have to be some sort of election. We do have a fair number of foreign policy hawks and Ukraine hawks in Congress right now. I think there's a couple that could possibly step up and fill that void, but it's a lot. And again, we don't have that many senators. So when one of them passes away and leaves unexpectedly, there's a little bit of chaos right now. So certainly think of his family and his constituents, and pretty surprising and tragic story there. Yeah,
I don't want to dive into this controversial ideas about behind his death. I'm interested. Lindsey Graham spent years pushing for tougher sanctions on Russia. So do you think his death could, slow that effort in Congress, or has support for sanctions become much bigger than one person?
I think that could go either direction right now. So there's actually a call in the United States to honor Senator Graham by passing the legislation that he's been advocating for. So in that sense, maybe it moves forward faster. On the other side, he has been one of the loudest voices, and without him there, maybe it falls off. The pessimistic side of me is that he's been talking about this for some time. These sanctions have been ready to go now for well over a year, and they haven't. So maybe his death forces, again, we're seeing a number of politicians across the aisle say, hey, the best way to honor his legacy is to push this through and maybe rename it and, something kind of in his honor. Maybe we'll see that. I'm just not personally very optimistic about U.S. sanctions packages at baseline right now.
Well, I see. Well, let's stay optimistic, Preston.
Let's do it.
What's left for us in this case? Thank you so much for your insight and answers. It's always a pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie.